People always ask how I balance my family life with 400 shows a year. I'm just doing what I love with the people I love. It's my magic life.
I like Wes Iseli. I like everything about him.
On today's episode, we have a legend in the world of magic. Everybody knows him, everybody loves him, and he's one of the nicest guys in the business. Even if you're not a rabid Magic fan like I am, you probably know this guy from his amazing TV appearances from Mr.Rogers to The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson, his World's Greatest Magic TV appearances, Penn and Teller Fool Us, where he fooled them a couple occasions, and actually 5 appearances on Fool Us. Pretty daggone awesome. Everybody, help us welcome Paul Gertner. What's up, Paul?
Hey.
How are you, sir?
Hey, how you doing? No, we're good. Real good. Good to be here.
So, just recently, your newest episode of Fool Us aired, and I have a Facebook group just called Magicians. It's got a little picture of a bookshelf, and I have laymen and magicians from all over the world. And I put up a video of you doing that routine. I don't remember when it was, but it was the Diana hat and the hat trick, and but it didn't have all those final loads. How long did it take you to develop those final loads? I put that up like 2 days before I knew you were going to be on Penn and Teller. I didn't know what you were doing on Penn and Teller. Just wow, what a coincidence! I love that routine from when I first saw it, man. But
yeah, that might have been. There's a clip on me doing that on the Tonight Show with Johnny Carson and doing my hat routine. But you're right, it didn't have some little surprises at the end. And but yeah, I kind of worked on those. I guess starting back in about February, the idea came, and yeah, it's about 2-3 months, I'd say, of working to about 3, 4, 5 through February through June, right up until the time I went and shot it. That I added some extra little surprises.
well, man, I was all smiles, and every surprise, I was like, "Good job, Paul! Wow, Paul! I didn't see that coming, Paul. Awesome, Paul! I was cheering for you so hard, man."
Thank you.
So how did you get started in magic? I have to ask this. I know this bothers some magicians. Everybody got a magic kit. But every story is different, Paul. How'd yours start?
Yeah, mine was kind of interesting in the sense that, I mean, I've traced it way back as in my one show I do here, I relate some of the stories in the show. And I actually start my show in Boston here with home movies that my father made. They're 8mm films of me as a kid. And I was 1 year old, and I would be doing things like reaching into a cookie jar, and I would take out a cookie, and a hand would come up and remove the cookie from my hand and take it back into the jar. And, little magical kind of sequences that he did with editing of these 8mm films. And so I've kind of traced my initial interest back to, as a 3 or 4 year old, watching these films when they were shown to the family. And I didn't understand what was going on. In other words, my sister would water the flowers in the backyard, and then I would water, and they would grow real fast. And then I would water the flowers in the backyard, and the flowers would disappear, and all of a sudden turn into fire. And burn to the ground, And so I was a bit of as the boy, I was the butt of the joke. My older sister Mary usually was the hero, and the things went wrong for me. And I guess that was just Dad's personality or whatever. And there were 7 of us kids in the house, so eventually other kids were in the movies and so on. But I remember as a kid not really understanding why is there a hand in the jar. Or why don't the flowers grow when I water them? And so I was intrigued by that aspect, and that was my first exposure to magic and illusion. And then later on, when I was about 10 years old, I realized that, I was always intrigued by these magical things. Anytime I saw a magician on TV, Mark Wilson, Alakazam, Magic Land of Alakazam. But then as a 10-year-old, I started going to the library, and I discovered that there were books. And there was a magic section for kids, but there was a bigger magic section for adults. And then my older sisters who were going to the adult section, they could help me get the adult books on magic. And so we get magic books by Bruce Elliott and Bill Severin and things like that. So that was my first exposure, basically books libraries.
Wow.
And say, but I did see a magician. Yeah, I did see a magician, I guess, at age 10 in school. I saw a magician who came to school and did a show. And the Vanishing Cane was something he did. The flowers where they changed colors each time he put them through a newspaper was something he did. And I tried to replicate those tricks by, rolling up a little dial rod in a tube and not understanding he had a cane that literally disappeared. And but not understanding that that was a magic prop. And so anyway, eventually I went to the library looking for solutions to the tricks I saw him do on stage, and found many, many, many more. And that was the original start, magic.
Wow. Well, you're in Boston now, but I know you from your World's Greatest Magic. You talk about growing up in Pennsylvania. I mean,
Sure.
That's a true story, I guess?
Yeah, it is.
How long have you been in Boston?
Pittsburgh. We've been here about 6 years now.
Oh, okay.
And my daughter had gone to school at Tufts University, and she loved the city. And when she got married, she and her husband decided to move to Boston. And she was here about 3 or 4 years. They had one baby, and then a couple of years later, she calls us up and says, we're having another baby. And my wife kind of turned to me and said, by the way, I'm moving to Boston. You're welcome to join me. and we decided to move to Boston to be here with the grandkids.
Wow.
Here, and then we have 2 grandkids on the other side of the country that are out in Denver. And but yeah, so we've been here about 6 years. And but the original, all my magic was developed in Pittsburgh. That's where my dad worked in the steel mills, and that's kind of where the whole steel ball bearing cups and balls idea came from. And
It sounds like I'm blowing smoke because I got you on the podcast, but I promise I'm not. That steel cups and balls is the best cups and balls routine out there, man. Golly, it's so good.
Thank you. It's a fun one. Yeah, I use that to close the show. The little theater show I do, and I close the show with that. And then it's ties in and it relates to that I actually did start that trick after finding steel ball bearings in my dad's workbench toolbox. He brought home steel props, pieces from the shop or the mill, and he was a bit of an engineer, mechanical guy, and I found steel ball bearings, and I didn't have any balls for the cups, and I started using them, but I didn't realize that the sound element was something that would surprise magicians. It was just, to me, it was another challenge as a 16-year-old, and started doing that when I was about 16. So, and yeah, developed into a bit of a reputation maker for me.
Wow.
Over the years.
Now, yeah. I've been busy. We had shows. Things are coming back, Paul. It's a great thing. We had shows. We've been busy. As far as your Mr. Rogers appearance and things like that, it's been a while since I've seen it. Didn't you do the steel cups and balls for Mr. Rogers? Isn't that the routine you did?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. I was probably 21, maybe 20, 21 years old at the time, maybe earlier, younger. But yeah, and back then I didn't have a large repertoire, so that was my go-to trick. I did cups and balls. I think I did a little bit of sponge ball magic for him, maybe, and I did a trick with a stick, which was a flip stick vanishing routine, and with a little poem. But yeah, I did the cups and balls on the Mr. Rogers show, and which is unusual. I mean, if you think about it, to have that kind of a sleight of hand trick on a show that was designed for children, I was surprised the directors and the producers let it go, that they liked it. It was nice and visual, and we kept it very, straightforward, and he was great to work with. But yeah, that was a fun little spot. Mr. Rogers, that was like back in 1974 or something like that.
Wow.
So,
well, I only got you for an hour today, but I mean, I could talk about TV appearances the entire podcast here. Mr. Rogers, I mean, how did you get that? Did you write into them? Did they contact you? How did something like that happen?
That was kind of interesting because it was, number one, it was a show that was produced here in Pittsburgh on a station called WQED. So obviously that was, the fact that I was living here in Pittsburgh made it even possible or whatever. But somehow or another, one of the producers had either seen me do something on, I guess, a local show or maybe a local TV thing, a local morning news program, something. But I got a call from them, from the producer, and they said, Mr. Rogers is interested in speaking with you because he's going to do a show on divorce. And he has this idea that when parents get divorced and the one parent is out of the house and the kid only sees mom, that kid sometimes thinks dad has disappeared, doesn't exist anymore. You know, dad's not there. Aww. And he wanted to do a show that demonstrated that when that happens, a divorce happens, that the one person that's not there doesn't disappear. They're still there. They're just not in your house anymore. But they will be, you know, see you and this and that. That was the concept. And he wanted to use magic to demonstrate that. And so we actually designed a little trick with I think I had little foam rabbits and a sponge rabbit that I would put in the handkerchief, and it disappeared. But then he was insistent that we actually essentially showed part of the secret to the trick, that the rabbit really wasn't gone. It was still there and would come back. You know, that was really important to the show. And because I remember having a little talk with him, well, I can't explain how a trick is done. I said, well, no, we're not going to explain how the trick is done, but we have to explain that the rabbit isn't really gone completely, you know, that it still exists. And he was insistent on that. We did that. We accomplished that goal. And then he used the other magic. Again, he related during the cups and balls, you know. So when you make something disappear, it's not really gone. Because you're a magician and your hands are very fast and you move very fast, you can hide it and we can't see it. And yeah, you know, that's what we're doing, Fred. So I found it to be an interesting project.
Wow. Well, what did I miss in your intro? Did I miss any television appearances? I'm sure I must have. Mr. Rogers, Johnny Carson. How many times were you on The World's Greatest Magic?
I think I just did that once.
Just the one.
One time with Gary when I did the cups and balls, and you know what we actually did? I filmed two. I did also film another sequence for them, and I filmed the trick Unshuffled, the one with the writing on the side.
Oh, I love that trick. Golly, I love that trick.
Yes, and I did film that for them. But to Gary Willette's credit, I had just flown into Vegas, and they set up, and I was like dead tired, and the whole bit. And he basically, it was a really, I didn't feel I hit the barrows, everything worked and the trick worked and everything like that, but I just didn't feel it was my best performance of it. And I remember going to Gary and saying, hey, you know, the cups, I know I was flawless on, perfect. I said, I know you want to use my second spot and so on, but I said, I just look at it, I said, but I just don't feel I did my best. And he said, you don't feel you did your best, we won't use it, you know, and he didn't. And so
wow.
And it just was because I just felt that I you know, might have had a reweave or I might have had to do something, and it wasn't perfect. And to his credit, he was willing to do that, you know, because they could have just aired it anyhow, you know. But they wanted me to look good, and so I was only on one time.
Wow. But man, I mean, imagine having Unshuffled on there. Yeah, you don't want it not perfect, but if they could have videotaped it, you know, just got you to do it again. Wow. Yeah. It's such a beautiful trick. So Fool Us is the same way though. When I went to Fool Us and they filmed, it was 3 hours for the B-roll, just for that 15-second intro. They could have taken it in 50 different directions, and we had a CGI guy. I had a line in mind that I took a final bow with my daughter. She was 4 days old. I had a bunny in one hand and my baby in the other. And the CGI guy was like, oh, yeah, we can just superimpose, you know, a clip art something in your hands. Just hold your hands like this. And I'm following direction, doing everything, and I'm looking at my wife, and I'm like, I hope they don't do that. That's going to make it look so awful. But they know what they're doing, man. They did great.
Yeah, we actually did that with the opening sequence for my latest Fool Us spot. They wanted to use an image of my wife in the opening. Being a little nervous watching the show. My wife would get very nervous whenever I'm on the show because she's in the audience and she has no control over how it goes. She doesn't know whether everything's going to work. She knows that some of the magic I do is walking a little bit of a knife edge. Something can go wrong and crash and burn because I kind of design magic that way a little bit. And so it's nerve-wracking for her. So they wanted her image, but it was during COVID, and there was no audience, and they wouldn't even allow her to fly out with me because she was not part of the act technically. So what we did was we shot a green screen here at home, and I sent it out to the producer that worked with me, and Larry put it right in. And
so they put her in the audience. That was flawless. Yeah. That fooled me.
Yeah, they made her look like she was sitting in the audience being nervous, but we did that here in the living room.
Oh, that is so awesome, Paul. Yes, I saw that, and I was like, wow, there she is. Wow, that's crazy.
My shoot this time, there was no audience, which is really kind of weird because you're just working, the only people in the room that you can see Penn and Teller. That's it. But they're fun to work with, I mean, they want everyone to look good, and they treat everyone really, really lovely, and it's a fun show to do.
But like you said, that they could have used any kind of footage with the World's Greatest Magic. They have it. They can do whatever they want with it. They can superimpose and do whatever. But they're so awesome. They're so awesome.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I was on season 7, and I was there the same time you were there. But you had just come off your airplane, and you were bringing in your equipment and everything, and I didn't want to bug you. But man, you're like a superstar to me, Paul. I see you across the hall. My wife was there. I'm like, look, there's Paul. It's so awesome. Every time I see you, Paul. Yeah, every time I see you, Paul, it's like that. You were at MAES just checking in, and I'm elbowing my wife. That's Paul Gertner. You're just checking in the hotel.
That's funny.
Anyway, so I mean, we can talk about your TV appearances the entire hour. But what's the one that sticks out the most for you? Was it Johnny Carson? Was it Mr.Rogers? Your Fool Us appearances? What do you think?
Yeah, I think it definitely has to go back to the first time being on the Carson show. Because that's what I really, my dad loved Carson, and he would watch Carson and so on all the time. And, so I saw, Johnny Carson all as I was growing up, and it was always, you always watched the show, and as you looked at it, your perspective was the band was to the right, and there's Johnny in the desk, and then the guests were sitting on the left side where the couch was, and that's the view you had for 30 years,
right?
Watching Johnny Carson, and when I was behind the curtain, the very colorful, multicolored curtain that they had, and you could hear the band playing and the directors tapping you on the shoulder and giving you a little thumbs up, you're ready to go, get ready to go out there, and the band stops and you heard Carson, so please welcome, Paul Gertner, and they kind of pulled the curtains aside, the guy reaches in, kind of does that, and you step out, and the minute I stepped out, I realized I'm looking at this from a different perspective,
Wow.
The band is on my left, and Johnny's desk is on my right, and I'm on the show. That I think to me was that moment that just I don't think I'll forget, and it was just, I remember trying to take a deep breath, and, knowing that behind that little red dot where I was looking on the camera were, millions of people, and this is it. You're on the show.
Millions of people, because they didn't have 300 channels like they have now, and Roku and Amazon.
Was, I think, if they have a big number, it could be 50 million or whatever. I mean, it wasn't, it was millions, when he had his show was cooking, and there were all the cable channels and all that stuff, But yeah, so, and Johnny came over and would sit at the desk. So each time I was on, we had like a little close-up table set, center stage, and Johnny would come over and be seated beside me at the desk. And not at the desk, at the table. And I would do my show right there in the center stage and do my spot. So.
Did they do like a Magic Week back then, or was it just you just happened to be on?
Oh, yeah, no, there was no Magic Week. I don't think Carson ever did a Magic Week.
Okay. I know Letterman did.
He never did, no. It was just, tonight we have, magician Paul Gertner. Paul's a close-up magician in Pittsburgh. Do a nice intro and so on. And, it was just me on the show. And each time, the first 2 times, I think I was the first person on. No, the first time, I had no idea that I thought I was going to be the last guy on the show, of course. and I was the first guest on the show that night.
Right.
And I didn't know that. I just never asked the question. I never assumed. And all of a sudden, after Johnny's doing his monologue, you know, the person comes in the green room and says, Gertner, come on. I'm like, nah, yeah, you're on. You're on after the commercial break. And it was just, they just didn't tell me the order, and I never thought to ask because I never assumed, you know.
Wow.
And so it was kind of like, oh, wow, that happened fast. But, yeah, he had me on first. And then the second two times, I think I was coming out. I know the last time it came out after Pete Mountain. And the second time, I think I was second after Louis Anderson. Yeah, I think I was after Louis Anderson. So it was, yeah, so there you had a little more time to watch the other performers on the show in the green room and breathe a little bit.
Wow.
But,
can people find all these appearances, like on your YouTube channel? Do you have a link to all these different awesome spots?
Well, see, that's the tricky part. Carson Productions controls those fairly strictly. And there's been one appearance that has stayed up. Now, there was somebody posted something and it's not approved by Carson Productions. It gets taken down very quickly from YouTube. So the Carson appearances are not on YouTube or anything like that, except for one of them. I don't know why. If you type in the words Paul Gertner, Johnny Carson, dice trick, you'll see it. The dice trick will pop up. And for some reason, that one has existed on the web for 10, 15 years.
Wow.
And, no one's ever taken it down. So that's the only one you can see, I think. I think there might be some others, but I did get the rights from Carson. Johnny was very nice to me and he gave me the rights to put those videos. I actually put them on my DVDs. So essentially I have a DVD. My Carson appearances, I think, there's one on each one of the volume 1, 2, and 3 steel and silver. And so I have the whole full appearance. I got the permission and the rights to do that. So those are available. That's the one place you get them. And what I did also with those, though, is I also added a voiceover appearance. So I have the original appearance on The Tonight Show, and then I do what do you call it, like a review or something. I'm talking over the appearance when I'm on The Tonight Show. And it's kind of interesting because I'm explaining to you what's working, what's not, what happens here. Oh, I wasn't expecting this, and so on. So I kind of do a little voiceover about explaining what's going on the show and what's going on in my head.
That's awesome, like a DVD commentary right there.
Commentary.
Yeah.
Commentary on the show. So there's one with no commentary, and on the same DVD there's one with commentary. And so I just thought that was kind of interesting because it is kind of, there's a lot going on there too. A couple shows going on in your head. I mean, there's the show that you're performing, that you're doing, talking, and so on. But there's also the show that you're thinking.
Right.
Is he coming here? Is he looking too close? Can I turn to this angle? Which camera's on? And those whole things are all running at the same time. And it's the same with the Fool Us or any TV show. There's a lot going on that you're trying to keep on top of at the same time. At least that's my approach.
People have no idea. I had a scratchy throat last week, and I had a show, and just in my head, I know that my next part of the show is a lot of dialogue before setting up the next trick. And I'm like, oh man, my throat itches. Hold on. All right, I got to get through this. And my head, I'm just thinking about, my throat's going to lock up. I need a mint. I need to signal my wife for a mint or something. Yeah, it's a whole nother thing. People have no idea what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
So when you walked down on Carson and the desk was to the left and to the right, you didn't do a practice run through or anything like they do on Fool Us? On Fool Us, we do a dress rehearsal live on stage.
Well, actually, no, we did do that on Carson. I mean, when I say I came out, I realized that, it wasn't like that was the first time. I knew that was going to be the case.
Okay.
It was that moment of experiencing it with a live audience, and boom.
Yeah.
But we did do, every time we did a run through of a dress rehearsal. And it was for the purpose of camera angles and everything. And Johnny normally didn't do this. Johnny's approach to his performers, where he didn't meet the performers usually before the show, or he didn't want to see the rehearsal. of a musician or a singer or anything, he wanted to react to it in real time, okay? And so he normally didn't, the standard approach for him was to stay in the dressing room while the rehearsals were going on.
Okay.
Or if he might not even be in the dressing room at that point. Sometimes he was coming in, an hour or two before the show, and we do the rehearsals during the day, and the show's being shot at 5:30 or something like that. So Johnny comes in, in his Corvette, and boom, he's in his dressing room, and he's ready to go. And that was kind of his mode of operation. When I was on the show, each time though he was there, and he came in, and I did a dress rehearsal with Johnny, sitting at the table, and which made for some interesting things, because the crew was not used to having Carson in studio. And but he would come in, and he would sit, and he told me once, he kind of indicated, he said, Paul, he says, I don't normally come in for rehearsal pieces. I know magic, and I know camera angles, and so I want everything perfect for you. And he basically said, I want it perfect. And so when I was sitting there, he'd say to me, the table, how about this little thing where your box is? I said, well, it's about 1.5 inches too low. Boom, that was taken care of immediately. Okay, bring it up. 1.5 inches. Fine. So everything here, and he sat for the rehearsals, and we're done, and then he went back to his dressing room. And so I always thought that was kind of interesting. He wanted to make sure everything was right.
Well, he was a
I don't know if he did that with all magicians I've heard, but for whatever reason, with close-up magic, that was what he did.
Well, he was such a fan of magic. He loved magic, and I think he knew that the pressure was on him to spotlight magic, and like Penn and Teller are doing nowadays. I mean, he's spotlighting the best magicians out there, and he felt that pressure. Maybe he wanted it to be good. Yeah.
And I mean, he would, he was very concerned about. Okay, now, he'd say he was Bobby Quinn was the director. I'd say, Bobby, are we coming in tight? Camera 2's coming tight. Yeah, Paul, you're going to hold that, do it, angle it here. Camera 2, we're going to come tight on that, for unshuffled and so on like that. And he was kind of, give me a little tour there of which camera was going to be tight on me, and so I knew where and when and what, and it worked out really well, and
Well, I think I first saw Unshuffled in the early 2000s. When did you develop that? I think you developed that way earlier, though, right?
Way earlier. Yeah, that was probably back in around 1974.
Wow, I bought it from your lecture, and I took it to a magician friend of mine's house. He's 75 years old, and he was like, "Yeah, I have that on my shelf right here. I just bought it at his lecture. I thought it was brand new. It blew me away." And he's like, "No, I've been doing that trick for 20 years." Yeah. But beautiful, man. Where can people find that? Can they see a video of you doing Unshuffled?
I think online, on my website, YouTube site, there's videos of me doing that trick, and then of course that's on Full Us. The Full Us videos are out there of me doing that, and for Penn and Teller. But yeah.
But the Unshuffled on Full Us, you had some extra nuances that is.
I did. I mean, each time I've been on the show, because a lot of times I'm taking a trick that I've done for 20, 30, 40 years,
right?
Even, and I'm doing it for Penn and Teller, who pretty much they bought my book, they read my book, they know my stuff, they know how I think, they know what I do. So each time I've done something on the show, just in deference to them, because I respect them greatly, and I try to add something interesting, not necessarily to fool them. If it does, fine. If it doesn't, that's fine. But just it's interesting to take a trick you've been doing for 30, 40 years to see if you can make it a little different, or I won't necessarily say better, because sometimes changing something doesn't make it better. You find out, I like the original better. But it is interesting, and that's what I've done with a lot of the magic. About 3 of the routines. The cups and balls, I did that too. The dice trick, I did that too. And Unshuffled, I did that and tweaked it a bit and added some surprise elements. And it was fun.
So, besides for Penn and Teller appearances, are you still creating magic to sell to the magic community? Have you worked on anything during the pandemic?
Yeah, most of the magic that I've been creating now has sort of wound up either in the show or in my close-up set. So I haven't put a whole lot of magic out lately, like with lectures and so on like that. I do have a lecture that I did in the UK about 3 or 4 years ago, and I just have never gotten time or chance to do it throughout the U.S. And it's got some good material on DVD, but I don't think it's on my website yet. Got to get more business oriented and get that out there. But I enjoy creating the stuff, but I create it usually for a purpose. And in the case of Penn and Teller, there has been sort of a purpose to look at an idea and work on some new elements of it. And then there have been a few tricks that I've added to my show that are getting nice and pretty strong. They're getting played in front of a real audience, and I'm fine tuning them. And that's where I've been putting most of the material. So eventually I do have to sit down. My wife has been encouraging me to do this for a long time, and take some of this new material and get it at least written down so it's recorded. And, otherwise it's just going to go to the wind, because I haven't recorded it all and stuff. I got to do that and put together another book or something like that.
So when we do our resort shows, we get hired the same resort every single year. We change up our show at least 80%. Is your theater show, Miracles and Other Deceptions, the close-up magic of Paul Gertner, is that changed every year if people come back? How does that work?
We're getting we get a lot of return customers.
I imagine so.
And I won't say the whole change doesn't change that percentage. I would say if they're coming back, they're probably going to see 2 or 3 new routines incorporated into the show if they come one year and then they come the next year, and so on. Okay. And then what also has changed is the storyline. I mean, initially the show, when I started doing this 3 or 4 years ago, about 4 years ago, I guess, now with the pandemic in there, but when I started doing it, it was more, it wasn't as threaded together with the storyline a little bit about, becoming interested in magic or where some of these tricks came from and so on like that. Situations with my grandkids, talking about doing magic with kids and the family as it grew up and so on. So I've kind of woven the storyline in, so that's developed also. So, but usually I'm saying most people, if they come back, they're usually seen it 1 year and they see it maybe a year or 2 later. There might be a year or 2 in between, and so they're definitely seeing some new things because I keep switching in and out. But just not the whole show changes. Because I definitely always have closed with the crystal balls.
Right. Well, you have to. Yeah.
And one of the opening pieces is sort of a Miser's Dream that was not there at the very beginning, and so that's now become the opening piece to the show.
Did you do any virtual shows there at your theater during the pandemic?
I didn't do any at the theater, and in 2020, in March when things started closing down, I did spend a lot of time, bit of money, I guess I had some of the equipment already, setting up a really nice 3-camera studio here in the office. And so I was set and ready, and I kind of thought I might do a lot in that vein. And I did some for good clients that called that would say, hey, I'm here, musicians do virtual shows now. Do you do that? I didn't want to say no, so I could say yes, and I could do something for clients that I've been working with for, 15, 20, 30 years. And I did for them. I didn't promote it a lot. I didn't try to market it because I didn't enjoy it. I found it really, really stressful. And to be sitting here with me being the one in charge of the audio levels and the video feed and the internet, and there's, maybe 150 people on the other side who have hired me to do a show for their whole company, and they're all calling in from all over the place, and it's all up to me. And I guess I should have. My wife did more of the tech work and so on for me, and we probably should have just, I know guys hired somebody just do all the tech work from a remote site, so on. I didn't do too much of that because I wasn't doing as many of them. I didn't get to that point. didn't do it for my show is I did not want people who came to my live show and said, "Oh, this guy's really good. You got to see a show." And so on. To have somebody come to my Zoom show, there's no way a Zoom show could compare to the same impact as a live show. Just can't happen.
You don't have that energy in the room. That's for sure.
Exactly. And so I didn't want someone watching the Zoom performance and, "No, I heard the guy was really good." It was good. I mean, it was good. You know, I mean, he did that thing with the big steel balls and those dice and that thing with the name on the card. And yes, it played very well. Yes, people liked it. But it just wasn't something I enjoyed doing. So every time I would do a corporate Zoom thing last year, I would get done and I would turn to my wife and say, "I'm never doing that again. I just didn't enjoy it. It just wasn't the same." And she'd say, "Well, then don't do it again. You don't have to. You know, wait till you can do the live show again." And then somebody would call for another client and would say, "Yeah, could you do a show?" "Okay, fine." Be back in the same loop again. That went on all year last year.
Well, that's
pretty much.
Yeah, that's the same thing we had.
It was the number. Like some of the guys were doing 15 shows, 20 shows in a day, or so. I never did anything like that. No. I would have gone. I would have killed myself. I couldn't have done it.
Well, it was like a dress rehearsal, you know?
Yeah.
And I had a comedian on a couple weeks ago, and I told him, I said, you know, we were talking about Eddie Murphy and growing up loving Eddie Murphy when you were younger. You'd watch Eddie Murphy in a concert, and you were there, and you'd be laughing so hard you're crying. But at home, you might chuckle. It's not the same. You don't have the same energy on a Zoom show. It's just not. Right. Yeah, I totally get you.
I just didn't want the audience to assume if they saw me on Zoom, they had seen my show here in Boston. And I was in a position to not have to worry about whether I needed to do the shows or not. And I said, I'd rather wait until I can say to them, it might be a year, it might be whatever it is, but, I'll be doing the shows again in Boston, and you can come see my live show, and you don't have to watch it online, But I could understand as a businessman, and I love business, and I love the corporate world. I enjoy it. That's why I made my living. I certainly understood the dynamics of, hey, I could do, 10 shows here today, half-hour shows, bang them out, and be sitting here at home and have a beer. I mean, that's an interesting concept. And where I think it really has value is I would assume, and I'm not necessarily trying to market myself a whole lot now to trade shows and everything. I mean, I'm just enjoying now the theater show. I'm still doing some trade shows for some corporate clients and that are old-time ones that I've been doing stuff for. But if I were a young person trying to get into the trade show market or sell myself, I would definitely make use of the whole Zoom setup. I would have a Zoom setup. It would never come down. And whenever somebody called for a sales call, and, hey, we're interested in having your show, they would get a Zoom link, and I would demonstrate what I would do for them in the show, the next day for them. And then I would use it as a sales tool.
Wow.
And that's where I think it's brilliant. If people use it in that manner, you close the deal right there. I mean, I would have killed for that when I was starting out. That ability to show what I do to someone live in real time. I mean, I remember before video was even a thing, I bought this huge clunky video machine to be able to take to someone's office, to be able to put a VHS tape in, because nobody had VHS tape players at the time, and this was and I would bring it to their office and set it up and put my tape in, and on the little screen they would see me at a trade show or see me do magic, and see me, so I could show them I could draw a crowd at a trade show, and that's how I sold, initially. And but now you can do it from your office. How beautiful is that? So.
That's an awesome tip. People take away from this podcast right now. Just have your Zoom thing set up, and you can do close-up magic right there. And with the trade shows, you're working in marketing. Their pitches and their ideas of what their things are. That's brilliant. That's really good.
Yeah, that'll close the deal. I mean, all you do is figure out one trick you do that can be customized easily. Mine is unshuffled. That's what I customize every time for a company. But if you can figure out one trick you can do, whether it's a wild card routine that changes from all kings, because they're the king of the industry, the leader, whatever, and all of a sudden it's changed into their company logo. Okay? So that becomes your go-to demo trick, you know. And then every time you get a sales call for a potential trick, you send them a Zoom link, and when they come and talk with you and you maybe do a few things for them, you say, but here's how I'd customize it, and you give them a little sample of how you would customize it with their name, and they're now seeing their message, and you go on their website, and you find 3 or 4 bullet points, you know, about they're the leading company in XYZ. They have 400 offices worldwide, and they have customer service and sales support at, you know, whatever, number800.com or whatever. And so you weave in those messages. You can be reading it from a little teleprompter in front of you or from just a printed sheet in front of you. So you're doing a custom demo showing them how you're weaving your message in for their show in real time. How hard is it's not hard to do. And it just, to me, it's a brilliant sales tool. So I think, you know, a lot of the guys will keep their little Zoom setup going. Even if they don't do Zoom shows, you're going to do Zoom sales calls.
What do you think about people that rush back to the trade shows and they have to be social distanced and wear masks for 8 hours a day, 12 hours a day on the floor? I mean, what's worse, that or the Zoom shows? That's pretty bad, too.
I have not done one yet. No, I'm going to do one. It was a trade show next month in November in, what city am I doing? Orlando. 4-day show. I think it's going to happen. I do not know if I'm going to have to wear a mask or not. I know that I've heard some of the guys, I've seen videos of some of the guys in Vegas and having to wear the masks while doing the show. I mean, it's doable, I guess. I mean, I did turn down, I told one client I just didn't want to do it, you know, and they understood. They were cool about it. I just said, well, let's switch it to another show, and they were happy with that in the spring. Because that was supposed to be in September, I think, or August. Actually, in August, I think I was going to do a show somewhere. But I was going to have to wear a mask the whole time. I didn't feel it would be fun. And I didn't think I could do as good a job for them as I can if we got to the point where I didn't need a mask. And the audience would, of course, all need masks, too, something like that. And they had to be socially distanced. So I kind of begged off. I mean, maybe I was Beam's chicken or whatever. I just didn't want to do it, and they were cool about it. But I mean, I admire the guys that pull it off, and I understand once you do it, it's probably not as bad as I'm making it in my mind. And who knows? I mean, I could be wearing a mask at my show next month. And,
yeah.
But I'm down to do it. I'm going to do this one for a good client, and I figure whatever the rules of the game are at that point, I'm all vaccinated, I'm ready to roll. It's just a matter of waiting for the world to catch up, maybe. And you know, but I mean, I understand people had to do it. I mean, you got to make a living, and you know, I've been in the business long enough that, you know, I mean, I want to retire, but I just kind of do it because I enjoy performing still. And but if I was a young guy and I had college bills and had you know, kids and so on like that, I'd be out there.
Yeah, you're at a nice place because you can turn them down just because it doesn't sound like fun. No thanks.
Yeah,
I mean, that's a great place to be at, Paul.
Yeah, and I've got good clients that are in that same situation that they say, hey, you know, there's the one client, the one show I was going to do, that show's back. They said, hey, quite a few of our marketing people have decided not to go to this one either. And it was when the virus was spiking with Delta, and they said, you know, so you're not the only one that's made this call. They said, we all understand, and so on. So, you know, if it's a good client, and, you know, that would be hard if you had just booked a brand new show for a client, and you know, and you're in that situation of having to make that decision. But you know, I think we'll all get through this. Everybody seems to be slowly starting to get back to normal.
I hope so. I've been saying that for a year and a half, though. Man, I hope so. I thought it was going to be 2 weeks, Paul. That's
I know, and I identify with that so much because when we canceled our shows in March and April of 2020 because of COVID, And I remember contacting all the, and I have a small audience at my show. It's only 32 people in the show room. So even if I had sold out groups, I didn't have to call a lot of people to cancel, because some of them were groups of, 4 or groups of 8. So, but each person I called back who bought the tickets, and I'd say, hey, look, they said, well, when are you going to start up again? And I said, well, we're realistically, we're probably talking May or June. Never ever really thinking that realistically May or June of 2021 was not even going to happen. I was talking May or June of 2020. I thought we were going to be back up and running. No, that didn't happen. So it's been a shock to everybody, and I just hope everybody was able to make it through okay.
So you were at Penn and Teller when I was there in season 7. When I left when I boarded the airplane, I saw one of my magician friends said that all buffets had shut down in Vegas. I left on March 4th or 5th.
Yeah, I was there. I taped on the 6th.
Okay.
Exactly. We were there at the same time, right?
So, I mean, when you left, were they shut down, or just the buffets and it started to slowly?
No, I taped on March 6th, and Penn and Teller kept going all that next week because they got it in. They kept going because that was like I came home on Friday or Saturday on the 6th of March, I believe it was. They kept going the whole next week, all the way through the week till Friday, and they finished taping on like the 13th or the 14th, right when everything shut down.
Wow.
And, they just barely made that season, getting it in under the line, because I think they could see it. It was coming, and they just got that done. But when you mentioned buffets and stuff like that, so after my son and daughter flew out with me to be with my wife in the audience during season 7 when I taped that, and they were. And Billy, my son Bill, he wanted to go to the Caesar's Palace Grand Seafood Buffet, real, expensive and buffet in Vegas, and all the lobster and all that stuff. And so we went there, and we're sitting at the buffet on that night after my video shoot on probably March 6th or whatever it was, and we're sitting there, and he and I, for some reason, had kept on top of the virus since January, when it was just beginning to happen in China, coming from China a little bit. And we were very aware of it for some reason. We like numbers. We're fascinated by how many people have the virus now or whatever. And so we were on top of it, talking about it all the time. And he's sitting there, and he says to me, Dad, look around you. And we're sitting there with these huge lobster things in front of us. He says, the virus is on its way here, and every single one of these utensils that we have touched have been touched by all 400 of these people in this place. And he was right.
Wow.
Because it was packed. It was packed. And so we were talking about it, and I said, this probably wasn't the best choice. Because we're now picking up the lobster with the hands that had touched all the utensils and eating it. So it was just a crazy time, And when we were walking down the strip at night, and I remember saying to him, I says, everything feels normal right now. The strip was packed, wall-to-wall people. I said, it's sort of like one of those movies where the asteroid is coming toward the Earth, and life is going on, and no one has a clue that their world is about to change.
No.
The next week and a half to 2 weeks, it's going to be different, and it was. It was.
I remember seeing Wuhan stuff in December, but by the time I was at Fool Us, and one of the producers, it wasn't a fist bump. He elbowed me. He put his elbow up to touch elbows, and I'm like, fist bump, I don't mind a fist bump. Fist bumps are cool, but an elbow thing, that's really weird. What is going on? And it was like, they knew because they were from LA and they were all scared over there. And I never thought anything of it. And then when they closed the buffets, when I got home, everything shut down. It was so crazy. So crazy. But we're almost through it, right, Paul? Tell me we're almost through it. Well, dude, I don't know what else to say. I was going to ask you, I want you to talk about your show real quick and let everybody know.
Yeah.
Do you have your wife wants you to write a book about all your new routines and things. Do you have DVD footage of your show there? I know you want people to be there, but for people that can't go to see that show, do you have like last year's show DVD or a download you could sell people?
There really isn't. We haven't filmed it ever yet, and we might do that this year. We might film it this year at some point once the crowds get back to normal levels. But so there is no DVD aside from this. It's pretty much just the main show is there. So it's where it is. Just to give you a little update, there's a hotel called the Omni Parker House Hotel. It's the oldest hotel in America, and it's one of the more haunted hotels in all of America, and which is great for a magic show. And I do a show there, not every Friday and Saturday night. We do sort of select. We call it Select Friday, Saturday, usually maybe twice a month, or usually 2 weekends a month. And it's a 7 o'clock show and a 9 o'clock show. It's about a 75-minute show, and it's 35 people. Or 36 people when we, like 32, I forget, I don't know how many, 32 to 36 is what we kind of max that room out in. But it's people right up, it's a close-up show. So the first, we usually have 12 people very close at the table, literally sitting at the table. It's a big round 7-foot table. And then we have 2 other rows with the tall rows in the back. And it's been popular. It's become on TripAdvisor. It's become like TripAdvisor has us listed as the #1 show in Boston, which is nice.
That's awesome.
And yes, it's awesome. So we get a lot of play from TripAdvisor because the ratings are, with 100% 4-star ratings on TripAdvisor and Yelp. And so when people comment about the show and they like the stories and the magic and how it all, and most people have never seen close-up magic. So, they really haven't. And, they're really surprised when they come and see a small, intimate audience, 30 people or so, and say, wow, you're doing a show just for us? Yep, just for you. And then they're getting to sit so close, and it's very interactive and so on. So it's a fun show. I'm very proud of it.
Wow. So it's called the Omni Park?
Omni Parker House.
Parker House.
Omni Parker House Hotel, and it's in downtown Boston, and it's right on the Freedom Trail in downtown Boston. And if you would want information on the show, you can go to bostonmagictheater.com. All one word, just Boston Magic Theater. Spell it any way you want. We got them all. And bostonmagictheater.com. There's all the information about the show. Or go to paulgertner.com. Just my name, Paul, PaulGertner.com. And all the information is there, too. Tickets and so on.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you've been doing that show for 4 years now?
Well, yeah, I guess we got 2 full years in before the pandemic hit. And then the pandemic hit, and then we were off, 18 months, and then we started up again in July. So we're now, putting shows on the board for, October, November, December, and we'll keep it going, But we had 2 solid years. So it took about 2 years to get it to the point where we were selling out every night, each time we did it. And, we'd sell out, a week or 2 in advance and put more shows on the schedule as those sold out. But now now we're back, like every company, every business, we're now sort of not starting from scratch, but the audiences are smaller now. Intentionally, we're making them only 16 people for social distancing and all that. And, it'll take a while to get back up to full levels. I think it'll take another 6 months or so before we're back to full capacity.
Wow. So do people come in there and they're saying, hey, I saw you on Penn and Teller? Everybody must be talking Penn and Teller with your 5 appearances.
Yeah, that's been really good. And I've been able to, occasionally get a little plug-in for the show or mention Penn and Teller clips. My show in Boston, if I can do that, that's always good. But yes, they all have seen most of them have seen Penn and Teller. So I've got a lot of business from being on the show.
That is so awesome.
Really fun. Mm-hmm.
So BostonMagicTheater.com, PaulGertnerMagic.com. And that's where you buy your magic tricks. So you have your DVDs, you have Unshuffled.
For magicians, it's PaulGertnerMagic.com, and that's where they would find things like Unshuffled and some of the different tricks I've put out over the years, and those are there. And not a big magic shop, but a small magic shop. And then PaulGertner.com is where you find all my websites for corporate work. You can find my corporate website and my personality out to everything. So,
Paul, if you haven't noticed, man, I've looked up to you my whole career, man. You really, honestly, honestly, man, you are one of the nicest guys. I was at a Magic convention and I was trying to compete and I just flubbed a trick, and you did not make fun. You didn't do anything. You just can't. You called me over to you and you told me, you just gave me like what is it called? Like red is dead, and you gave me like an analogy for something like that. And I'll tell you off the air what I did. I just did a bonehead move, but my trick didn't work because whatever. I messed up because I'm in Virginia. I feel like I'm in the middle of nowhere magic-wise. I'm not in Philadelphia with a big magic community. I'm the only full-time magician within 4 hours of me. So I feel like I'm alone. And I thought that I had to compete. I thought that I had to create something that looked like a competition piece. Now that I'm wiser a little bit, I realize that it's better to do like you do and do stuff that you've been doing for 30 years, because during a competition, things come at you from all different angles. You know, lights get turned on, the chairs fall over. You might hear the guy in the front row snoring. You ask the volunteer for help, and what? They don't have their hearing aid in. You have to be aware of all those scenarios. And doing like you do, you're a genius. You did a trick that you've been doing for 40 years on Fool Us, your most recent appearance. You added a couple extra caveats to it, but it was beautiful, Paul. You're awesome.
Thank you.
You're awesome. Thank you, Paul.
You bet.
All right, man. That's everything. PaulGertner.com. Check him out. BostonMagicTheater.com. When we're up in Boston, we're gonna come check you out. I promise. And when you get that DVD, you let us know, man. We'll buy one right away. Thank you, Paul.
Okay.
Hey, stay on the line real fast, Paul. I have a couple plugs real quick. Our TV show, Wes Iseli's Magiclife, is on Roku, Amazon Fire, Apple TV, Android TV, the Jewel TV app, and tons of other places. It's in over 100 million households. To check it out, to binge watch all of season 1 and 2. And every Saturday and Sunday in October, Natalie and I will be performing at Round Hill Farm in Culpeper. Check out wesisley.com for showtimes. And check out wesisley.com for our new show merch. That's logo t-shirts, TV Magic Show t-shirts. We have the Magic Man hats, stickers, playing cards, and more. See you next week. Today's episode of the podcast is sponsored by Express Copy and Graphics. Mention promo code Wes Iseli to get 10% off. Their website is expresscopy.com. That's XPRESS-COPY.com. They do it all. Copies, banners, signs, vehicle wraps, promo items, practically anything you need printed, they can do it for you. These guys are great. Check them out. Check us out online at wesisley.com and patreon.com/Wes_Iseli for behind-the-scenes videos, blooper videos, never-before-seen footage, discounts on merchandise, magic trick tutorials, and more. That's Wes Iseli, spelled Wesiseli.